I will start with the theme shloka, Dheya shloka of Bharatiya Shikshan Mandal, which defines education. Tatkarmayanna bandhaya sa vidyaya vimuktaye ayasaya param karma vidyanya shilpane punam. Respected director and other dignitaries, this is the couplet from Vishnu Purana which defines how we look at education in this country for thousands of years. This couplet gives us the definition of education as education is one which liberates, preceded by definition of action. Action is one which does not bind. We are all students of science and we know that wherever there is a cause, there is an effect. The same principle of cause and effect has been philosophized by the Bharatiya rishis into the concept of karma. Whatever actions we do, we will be bound by the results of those actions. And for a human being to lead a life with bliss, not just happiness, not just pleasures, not just joy, but infinite eternal bliss, all this multiplied into infinity becomes bliss. All joys of life, all pleasures of life, everything that we enjoy has to come to bliss. And if that has to be done, one has to be trained properly, one has to be enabled, one has to be empowered to do actions without getting bound by the results. Tat karma yan na bandhaya. That only is action which does not bind. And the Rishi says all other actions, means the actions that bind you, are fruitless, worthless labor. Aya saya aparam karma. All other actions are worthless labor. And this, to make a human being enabled, empowered to do such actions, what kind of an education has to be given? Sa vidyaya vimuktaye. Education that liberates from all kinds of bondages, bondages of ignorance, bondages of poverty. Whatever be the bondage, when we say mukti, normally in the Bharatiya context, mukti is always the ultimate liberation, emancipation. We always talk about nirvana, moksha, mukti, like that. But here, when savidyaya vimukte is to be understood, it is not just that spiritual mukti the Rishi is talking about. He is talking about liberation, emancipation at every level. Whatever be the level of bondage, at that level, education should liberate. And this is the basic paradigm shift that is to be needed to be done in education. Education is not just merely limited to providing skills, knowledge, and behavioral pattern to the students to make them earn livelihood. No, that's a very limited purpose. That will happen. That will happen as a byproduct. If you create a human being whose personality is overall developed, who is enriched, who is empowered, who is complete in all the senses. In Sanskrit, we call such person as yukta, one who has all the essential attributes, one who is full of those attributes. Yukta means one who has those attributes. So, education to be liberating, it should become enabling. Vidya muktakari has to be Vidya yuktakari. Education will liberate only if it empowers, enables the students and the teachers, both, all those who are involved in the process of education, process of learning, should slowly grow, gradually grow. Sahana vavatu, that is the prayer that the teacher is doing from the Upanishadic times. Let both of us grow. Sahanau avatu. In Sanskrit, this is in a special. We have singular and plural in English, but in Sanskrit there is dvivachana, one which is applied only to two. This Sahana avatu is a prayer for two. Let both of us grow. Sahanau avatu. So the teacher and the student together grow gradually each day, become more yukta. To become mukta, you have to become yukta. And if vidya is muktakari, it has to be yuktakari. If vidya is muktakari also and yuktakari also, then naturally, if it is liberating and enabling, then the third purpose of education comes into focus, which is called as vidya arthakari. Then it will be a productive education. Then earning livelihood will not be a problem, will not be a challenge at all. We still have more than 10,000 Gurukuls working in this country, and Bharatiya Shikshan Mandal is organizing them through our Gurukul Prakalpa. We have in fact brought together more than 4,000 functioning Gurukulas. And when we look at the results, when we look at the outcome of this Gurukula, the student after 12 years who is coming out of the Gurukula is not bound by the specialization that if you are an engineer, you can only practice that. If you are a doctor, you can only practice that. Our Gurukula student is free to go into any field he feels like. Because he is good in kalas, he is good in arts, he knows music. He can play flute, he can play sitar, he can play more than 26 different instruments, he can sing, he can dance. At the same time, he knows how to get into agriculture. He knows Ayurveda. So he knows so many things that he can decide his own specialization. After completing education, he can go into any field. Vidya becomes arthakari if it is yuktakari. You have enabled him, you have given him so much knowledge of life that he can now choose his livelihood. So, muktakari, yuktakari, arthakari. That is Bharatiya concept of education. And why I started this on a talk about NEP, and in that also the role of teachers in implementing NEP, is we have to keep that ideal education into mind when we are trying to implement this national education policy. This national education policy has all the seeds. I repeat, this national education policy has all the seeds of again regaining, rejuvenating this kind of an education system which was there in this country for ages together, and for which this country was known as Vishwaguru, Jagadguru, the guide of the whole world for thousands and thousands of years, and the whole world was looking towards this country, looking towards Bharat. We're coming here in lots and lots. Nalanda, they say, had a waiting list of more than 15,000 students every year. That was the waiting list, because only 10,000 could be admitted. And every year they used to conduct entrance test, Nalanda, like what we have IIT JEE now. That was there in 6th century, that was there in 7th century. Fai Yin and all those travelers from China and all over the world have chronicled this about the Gurukuls in this country. To regain that kind of a supremacy in education, to rejuvenate our education system, to provide the same quality of education at the global level, not just to this country, the paradigm shift has to happen in the attitude of the teachers. How they look at themselves and how they look at students and how they look at the whole education process. And those seeds are available in this National Education Policy, which is a 66-page document, a very small document, 66 pages of A4 size. Any one of you can read it out within half an hour or 40 minutes. I don't know if we have read it Because I read it on the first day on which is what 29th July 2020 it was declared, and in the evening I read it completely and studied each provision and came out with a draft from Bharatiya Shikshan Mandal side where we enlisted 19 such seeds, Bija Bindu we called. 19 seeds of paradigm shift in national education policy, which can completely revamp the education system, bring it back to the original glory with quality education provided to the masses, not just to some elite institutes, but to all the students, giving a quality education. That should be the goal of each teacher in this country. That's how we should look at the national education policy, as an opportunity to bring back that kind of an education system which will provide quality education with an access to everyone in this country. That's why the education policy, national education policy, gives a target of 100% GER for the school education. By 2030, it says, by 2030, each child born in this country will get an opportunity to be enrolled in school, 100% gross enrollment ratio, GER. That is the target this education policy sets before itself, sets before not just the government, but all those who are connected with education, directly, formally, or people like me who are informally connected to the education system. It is an opportunity as well as a challenge. So this national education policy sets before us such opportunities as well as challenges to take education to all the nook and corner of the country, to every child born, at the same time providing quality education in the language in which they understand. Even after 200 years of English domination in the governance, even after 200 years of forcibly putting English ahead of every language in this country, government, market, everybody trying to make English a supreme language, even after efforts of 200 years, only 12% in 2011 census said that they know English. Again, mark my word. I am not saying 12% know English. I am saying in 2011 census, only 12% population of this country said that we know English. 88% of the population does not know English. And we are depriving them of a knowledge, we are depriving them of higher education, we are depriving them of a chance to show their inner talent, their inner what kind of a explosive kind of a entrepreneurship they have got. We are curbing that just because we are saying that higher education cannot be provided. Technical education cannot be provided in Marathi or in Hindi or in Gujarati, Tamil, Telugu, Assamia, Bangla, Odia. Why not? Germany is spoken by much less people than people who speak Marathi, are 3 times more than the people who speak German in the world. But Germany can have complete engineering education in its own language. So does the Dutch and French and all other countries. China, Mandarin, they teach all professional education in their language. Israel, a very small country with a population of not even 1 million, and they teach their complete higher education in Hebrew, which was once thought a dead language. But now Israel has produced more patents than what this country of 135 crores could produce. Why? Because they are teaching in their own language. For 70 long years in this country, we have not been able to open up. We have not been able to loosen this bottleneck by not providing education in our own languages. Well, I will not go into the reasons, but this education policy 2020 gives us an opportunity to open up that bottleneck, to open up this field of knowledge to this 88% of the population, to bring them out of that frustration, to bring them out of that kind of a mindset in which they think, I am not able to do it because I don't know English. Now this national education policy says, okay, you know your own language, you can learn. You can learn anything. This national education policy aims at providing professional education, providing medical education, providing technical education, providing all kinds of higher education in Bharatiya languages. They have not used just mother tongue, because then we go into different kinds of arguments. They have said regional, local, mother tongue, all three languages, all three adjectives they have used. I use one for that. Bharatiya languages. Make it available. Don't make it compulsory either in English or in Marathi. Let the choice be there. Let the student have the choice. And this is a challenge for teachers. This is an opportunity for students. This is a challenge for teachers. Because as soon as we talk about higher education in Bharatiya languages, the first thing that comes to our mind, where are the textbooks? Who will translate them? And then I talk to the teachers, I say, why translate? Why not write in your mother tongue? You have been teaching your subject for 30 years, 40 years, and you know your mother tongue. You can write it in Marathi, you can write it in Hindi. H.C. Verma, the IIT Kanpur professor, has been writing physics textbooks in Hindi for last 30 years. And his book is the best for physics, for the 12th standard also. H.C. Verma. In IIT Kanpur, he has been teaching physics in Hindi for last 20 years. Now he retired last year. So there are examples. This can be done. In our own VNIT, we have many people who have experimented like that. One of our friends, Sachin Mandavgane, he experimented that. Those who are coming from the northern side, he said, I will teach you in Hindi. First year he teaches them in Hindi. Fluid mechanics teaches in Hindi. Now, can we not write our own textbooks in our own languages? Why go for translation only? Why not think original? If the best book in C++ is from Nagpur, my namesake, Yashwant Kanitkar, is famous all over the country. Whenever I go, they ask me, "Aapke kaun hai?" Because I come from Nagpur, and Kanitkar, they say C++, they have read that textbook. Why can't we write in our own textbooks in our own language? So that is a challenge and opportunity both. Another very important feature of this national education policy, the kind of flexibility it provides. In higher education also, in school education also. But because all of you are of higher education, I will not go into the provisions of school education. But right from 9th standard to 12th standard, that flexibility of choice of subjects. Anil Sahasrabudhe, who started this lecture series, with one of his statements became very controversial when he said that to give the entrance exam, you need not have physics or maths in 12th. But he did not say the entrance exam will not have physics or maths. One has to know physics or maths to get into IIT or get into engineering education, because he will have to give entrance exam of IIT JEE according to the procedure by which it is taken by anybody. Whether he had the subjects officially in 9th to 12th or not, does not matter. That kind of a flexibility this national education policy is giving, and that flexibility continues in the higher education. This multiple entry and multiple exit, which was one of the very important recommendations of Bharatiya Shikshan Mandal, has been accepted ad verbatim by the education policy. So, there are many such provisions which give you flexibility, but it is again a challenge for the teachers, because you will have to revamp your syllabus and curriculum. If one has to have the provision, it will not be used by 100% students, it is for exceptions. But if somebody has to leave education after first year, he should be given a certificate. To have that provision, this can be done. You will have to revamp your syllabus for first 2 semesters, because not just certificate, you will have to give something worthwhile in that 1 year. If secondary, if you have to provide diploma, then those 4 semesters will have to be restructured. Now that has to be done by the teachers. That restructuring has to go in the mindset. So this flexibility, which is one of the cornerstone of this national education policy, can be implemented only by the teachers. No one else can do that. This provision of Bharatiya languages can only be done by the teachers. There are some governance issues which will be solved by the government. They have to pass laws, like they are going to have a single window regulator. That is a very great revolution in governing of the higher education, because today we have more than 17 regulators at the national level, and sometimes the regulations are contradictory also, like in case of architecture or in case of pharmacy, there were so many anomalies. But with single regulator of Higher Education Council, we will have a single window of governance. So that things the government will do. In that we may not have much role, but recommendatory role is always there, because the draft bill will come before everybody. We must read that draft and we must give our recommendations, our suggestions to improve that draft, because this kind of a regulatory system will go for next 50 years. So when it is being formulated, when it is evolving, we have an opportunity to contribute. But the more important challenge is in the provisions in which government does not want to interfere. This course curriculum and course correction in the syllabus, this government is not going to interfere. This they have left to us. Another very important paradigm shift is from creating job seekers to creating job givers. This is what in 1835 happened to our education system, that our education system was geared up, was structured by the Britishers to produce employees, not the employers. They clearly said, we will create clerks. That was their intention, and that has happened till now. Even today, everybody who graduates from our education system is in search of a job, is an employment seeker, is a job seeker, is termed as educated unemployed. But there is something called as self-employment. There is something called as entrepreneur. This country has been number 1 in GDP for more than 1500 years. And this is not what I am saying. This is what Angus Maddison says. The world famous British economist in America, who was given this task by OECD, one of the richest organization of countries, called as Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. It is an organization of all the rich countries, earlier of only 7, now it is 17 countries which are members of OECD. This OECD in 2000, year 2000, when the millennia was changing, this OECD gave a contract to Angus Maddison to write Economic History of the World, which was published in 2004 after a lot of research. Angus Maddison wrote Economic History of the World Millennial Perspective, in which he wrote the economic history of the world for 2000 years, from 0 CE to 2000 Christian era. He wrote for 2000 years of common era. He wrote the economic history of the world, and in which he said for first 1500 years, for first 15 centuries, Bharat was contributing to the tune of 46 to 66% of the world GDP. Contribution of Bharat was almost 2/3 of the world GDP till 1500. And how this happened? This just did not happen because of agriculture. This happened because of the manufacturing sectors. We have been eternal entrepreneurs, traders, and manufacturers. We manufactured goods and took them all over the world. That's why the Silk Route was there. That's why our navigation was happening from Chola Rajendra, who had his in Tamil Nadu. His capital was in Tamil Nadu. His ships will go to China, all along the South China Sea, and were doing trading with thousands of countries. This Bharat has been traditionally an entrepreneur's country. We have been entrepreneurs, but in last couple of centuries, after the Britishers took charge, our GDP contribution to the world drastically dropped down. After Nalanda was burned, after Gurukulas, our education system was burned and disintegrated into villages, our GDP contribution fell from 46% to 23% in 19th century, beginning of the 19th century. And after 1835, it fell down to 2% during independence. In 1947, our GDP contribution was just 2%. And today, we are number 5 or number 6 GDP country in the world ranking, and a country which aspires to become a 5 trillion GDP country. The main paradigm shift has to come from creating job seekers to creating job givers. And this is what NEP aims at. And this can happen only if teachers change their classroom techniques. If the teachers do not change their mindset, their attitude, the policy cannot in itself create job givers. So this incubation, this startup, this mudra loans, this can all become effective only if the teachers change their mindset. This all can help the students if we decide to create job givers, and that kind of a methodology, pedagogy is used in our classroom. Learning methodologies are changed, outcomes are changed for creating job givers, entrepreneurs. These are very important features of NEP which demand implementation from the teachers. People ask me, when is it going to be implemented? I said it started implementing on 29 July. When the cabinet accepted this 66-page document as national education policy, this policy came into existence. Implementation started on 6th of August. Within 7 days, the name of the ministry was changed back to Education Ministry. Today it is Ministry of Education, no more HRD. And this name change is not just for the namesake. This changes the whole attitude. HRD means creating human resource, again only creating job, only creating employees, not employers. So we are not just creating human resource, we are giving them education so that they are completely transformed, a personality is developed, and they can choose to be job giver or job seeker, whatever they like. They get the independence, get the liberty of choice, that option of choice. That the name change of the ministry is not just for the namesake, it changes the attitude. This happened within 7 days. Like that, many of the provisions are already being implemented. So implementation is not going to happen, it is happening. What is our contribution? I will end with just one simple comment which I always make when I am especially talking to gurus, talking to teachers. You have heard first 2 talks in this series by Anil Sahasrabudheji and by Kasturi Ranganji. I am very closely working with them for last 4-5 years. And I have seen what kind of a labor was put in by Kasturi Ranganji, what kind of hard work, efforts, what kind of intention. Every one single provision of the NEP is well thought of, not just by Kasturi Ranganji, whole of his team. May it be M.K. Sridhar, may it be Kanti Maniji, may it be Manjul Bhargav, the youngest rishi of the team. I call it a team of rishis. I call Kasturi Ranganji the modern rishi, because that rishihood can be seen. When he gave talk, you must have seen it. That simplicity, that beauty of thought, that clarity of thought, that comes through realization, by experience. And that rishi gave us a very great national education policy. All these rishis. Manjul Bhargav, who got Fields Medal in mathematics, professor of Princeton University, took a sabbatical for 2 years, came here and dedicated whole of his 2 years to creating this policy document. Each word was debated, not just within the committee. After the committee created a draft or almost 240 pages, it was then pruned down to 108 pages, and then those 108 pages were debated, discussed in the PMO. And Manjul Bhargav was discussing it with the Prime Minister and with other officers in the PMO, and each word was discussed. In that chapter of holistic syllabus for higher education, there was a word called liberal education. And there was a debate on what does it mean by liberal education. 50% of the syllabus for the engineering student will consist of life-saving material, which normally is in humanities or in management or in environment or in other sectors, will be given to every student, may it be engineering student, may it be medical student. This holistic syllabus, this liberal education concept. The word liberal has become very controversial. So that word of liberal education was debated, fiercely debated by people. I was involved in that debate. Each word was debated, and after that kind of a shastrartha, after that kind of a debate and after that kind of a discussion, this document of 66 pages has come out. We all must read it. And I will end with this. This is a policy created by rishis, aimed at creating rishis as an outcome of the education system. But for actualizing that vision and mission of this national education policy, teachers have to become rishis to implement it. Created by rishis to create rishis has to be implemented by rishis. And for being rishis, we have to do tapa. Tapa means rigor. In academics, we call it academic rigor. Without tapa, we cannot be rishis. So let us all resolve today to do the tapa that is needed to implement this national education. I can tell you it is not easy. It is not in our comfort zone. We'll have to come out of our comfort zone. To become rishi, we have to come out of our comfort zone. Kasturi Ranganji must have told you the incident in which he went to one of the remote villages in Chhattisgarh to meet Swami Vidyasagarji Maharaj, the Jain Muni, because Swami Vidyasagarji would only walk, so he cannot go to Bangalore to meet Kasturi Ranganji. Kasturi Ranganji came out of all the comfort zone, AC room and all that, and went to the village in which that Jain Muni was residing, met him, discussed with him, discussed the recommendations given by the Jain Muni for the education policy, and included some of them. That kind of effort was put in by rishis to create this education policy. So we have to come out of our comfort zone. We have to think. We are not against any language. You can see I am speaking in English without any effort. Speaking in English is not a problem. I do not profess Bharatiya languages because I don't know English. I know English. I have command over English. I have been speaking English because I was secretary of Vivekananda International Foundation. So that's not a problem. But still, 88% of Bharat does not know English. Have karuna for them. Have compassion for them. Why should they be deprived of the great knowledge of physics, or great knowledge of chemistry, or great knowledge of electronics? Why shouldn't they know that? Why should we not provide that knowledge in Marathi, Hindi or other languages? With that kind of a karuna, all of the teachers should do tapas. Karuna plus tapas is equal to knowledge, and that knowledge is always useful knowledge. That knowledge is always applied knowledge. That knowledge is always good for the society, is benevolent knowledge. So let us all be the creators of benevolent knowledge. Let us all be Rishi and implement this national education policy created by the Rishis to create more Rishis. That should be our aim of implementing this national education policy. Thank you.